All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Armchair Armdrager podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ben Hersick, and it is Royal Rumble weekend. We've got two stacked shows with Worlds Collide the night before and the Royal Rumble on Sunday. For those who have been keeping up with stuff, I've been kind of busy with school, so I haven't had time to watch a lot of wrestling. I've been able to keep up with what's going on thanks to social media and friends and whatnot. So that's very helpful, at least. I will not be able to watch the Rumble live, I think. Depends on what time I get back from some stuff I got going on Sunday. I could be back in time for the matches themselves, because I doubt either one of them is going to kick off the show. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into anything else, though, as these podcasts always start, you can follow myself on Twitter at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat at Things Combat, where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. I recently announced I'm taking a bit of a brief break due to school, because school is important. So once the semester's up, I'll be hitting the ground running hard with that stuff again. And I'm the sports editor over at The Cauldron at Cleveland State. And you can follow us on Twitter at CSU Cauldron. Our first issue just came out. I had one very challenging piece. The other was a lot of fun for me to write because I always enjoy writing about amateur wrestling as well. Cleveland State, there's a CSU wrestling piece and a look back at the decades for Cleveland State, where I look back at everything that's happened over the past 10 years, considering we're now in 2020, and we see what's happened for Cleveland State in that time, sports-wise. Anyway, enough plugs and whatnot. Before I forget, go buy All Things Combat merch at our merch store, which is linked in the description below as well. Let's get into Worlds Collide. So Worlds Collide is going to be the day before the Royal Rumble, where NXT UK goes head-to-head with NXT. I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out, because during Royal Rumble, during Survivor Series week, NXT UK fell under the NXT banner. We had Toni Storm in the women's 5-on-5-on-5 tag team match. Walter was in the men's 5-on-5-on-5, although you probably wouldn't remember it because he was gone so quickly. Maybe that's the championship, I don't know. But this is the first time I can remember NXT and NXT UK actually going head-to-head. So let's start with the one pre-show match. It's weird saying we're having a pre-show match on an NXT show. It is Mia Yim taking on Kaylee Ray. The NXT UK Women's Championship is not on the line. So with this one, you kind of look at it as maybe this is where NXT UK gets the win, because the rest of the show looks like it could be NXT dominated. But I do want to point out that this might be a thing that we see a lot more now, with NXT now having the Cruiserweight Championship on their brand. We could start to see NXT have, or takeovers have 6 matches, 5 championship matches on the main show, and 1 match on the pre-show, like a normal storyline match. Is that what's going to be? Is that what's going to happen? We'll see. But that's what we have this week. Kaylee Ray is also somebody who I think they want to start building up, because the NXT UK women's division isn't that deep, and she's beaten Toni Storm and she's beaten Viper. I believe she goes by Viper. She's either Viper or Piper in NXT UK. And I don't remember which it is. It's really annoying. I am legit going to look if I can find the tab. Where is my WWE personnel tab? I have it closed. I gotta reopen it. This is a great start. WWE This is WWE personnel. There we go. NXT UK. She goes by Piper Niven. I'm dumb. So yeah, Piper Niven is... It seems like she might be the next person to take the title I kind of can't really tell in the NXT UK Women's Division. Nina Samuels is there. You have Ginny. You have oh crap, what's her name? Zaya Brookside. Killer Kelly's there, but you don't really have a lot. You have a little bit here and there. I'd like to see it be built up a little more. Maybe we see some more wrestlers sign over there. I'm still convinced if she did not have to retire due to injuries, Charlie Morgan would be there. But this is the one match I see NXT UK winning, especially because Mia Yim doesn't have a whole lot going on NXT right now. She was going to be a part of War Games, but due to being attacked by Dakota Kai, that never happened. And it's always been weird. Like after they got signed, like certain wrestlers from tournaments, they just haven't clicked. Cedric took a little while to click, and then you're like, oh, we should care about this guy, and now Vince is like, oh, no, you shouldn't. That's Vince. With Mia Yim, it's like people loved her in the Mae Young Classic, and she's had decent matches on NXT, but there's just something that isn't clicking, and you don't know what it is. And that's what's a little bit annoying. I almost feel like her character should just be a heel. Because she's cheered because she beats up bad guys right now, yes, but she's into the Wu-Tang Clan. She's almost got this kind of like, for lack of a better term, like a street thug persona, it seems. Whenever she comes outside of her wrestling gear, she's in sweatpants and Timbs. She's almost like this. It's almost like a punk rocker, essentially, kind of, where she's against the social norms and doing her own thing. And I feel that would be a little bit better as a heel. It could just be that's what's wrong with it. I'm not 100% sure, like I said earlier, but we will see on that. But this is an easy match to pick. This is maybe the easiest match to pick on the show. Maybe next to another one. But I think Kaylee Ray walks away with the win here. Continues to build her up, and we see her eventually move over to the main NXT brand. I'm also curious to see how NXT is going to handle WrestleMania weekend, because with two shows, NXT and NXT UK, you can't get all that talent on one takeover, right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm not sure. Next up, I'm going to try and also kind of predict the order of the show, because I can see two matches back to back to close the show. And the other three are like where you kind of fill it all out. Let's go with the one non-title match on the show. Let's go with that. Finn Balor versus Ilya Dragunov. This one is going to be a lot of fun. I've become a big fan of Dragunov from what I've seen. He's a very interesting wrestler. He's very different, and he seems to be the next in line for Walter's NXT UK Championship. This is kind of a match where it's next in line versus next in line. Pretty much who's got next. Balor is going to be the next NXT champion. I feel very confident in saying that. And Ilya Dragunov could be the next NXT UK champion. That one's a little bit harder to predict. But this match, while Dragunov is great, Finn Balor doesn't necessarily have that big win since coming back to NXT yet. He's won matches, yes, he's done amazing things, but he's missing that one big win. This would be that big win to get him back on track in NXT. And Dragunov's a guy who can take the loss. He doesn't get affected by it in any way, shape, or form. This is pretty much just a friendly competition show where may the best guys win. Or gals. It's also a very weird type of match because you wouldn't think Balor and Dragunov would match up well together, but they actually really do. They're both not the tallest guys in the room. They're both not the strongest hitters in the room, but they are both very, very technical and very, very slick. That's something I'm excited to see out of Finn Balor. We haven't seen Finn Balor be super slick since coming to WWE even. He's been more in the underdog role because he's smaller than most people, and he's kind of been in that role where it's like he's fighting from underneath, for lack of a better term. Do we see him turn that around here? Who knows? I would, for one, be very happy if he did, especially because I'm picking him. But it's also kind of like you look at it as if this is almost like a futures match where whoever wins this is going to be a big name in the future. We will have to wait and see, though, because you never know. Plans change all the time. And yeah. Let's go next to another match that could be a lot of fun. The Cruiserweight Fatal 4-Way Championship match. Angel Garza defends against Isaiah Swerve Scott, Jordan Devlin, and Travis Banks. I really want to pick Banks here. I know he's not winning. I really want to pick him. To me, this comes down to two people. It's either going to be Garza or Scott. Because I don't see NXT UK getting the Cruiserweight Championship, especially when they just rebranded it to the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. And I feel like they put Banks in there because Banks can eat the loss. To be fair, so could have Ligero or Kendrick, but Kendrick wouldn't have really made it a whole NXT versus NXT thing when he's technically 205 Live still. Yes, 205 Live is still a thing, I think. So the only reason Banks is in this match is because it's NXT UK representation. So you have two from NXT UK, two from NXT North America. And you look at it, it's between Garza and Scott. Because those two feel like the biggest deals in this match. Scott's had promo packages built around him and whatnot. Garza just won the title from Lio Rush. And all that. Devlin just had a big match, too, that I keep forgetting about, against Travis Banks. Not Travis Banks, Tyler Bate, which Bate won. So I don't think they want Devlin to take two big pinfall losses back-to-back. So there's that. There's also the fact that I want to see this title almost be used as like a launching pad for wrestlers. So like, and especially with NXT UK having such a small roster, this wouldn't make sense for them. But like Lio Rush was the NXT Cruiserweight champion. Why is Lio Rush still fighting for the Cruiserweight championship? What if we use this championship as a launching point? So now we see Lio Rush challenging for like the North American or tag team titles. Put Lio Rush with somebody. If he was a North American champion, Keith Lee would have been a fantastic person to put him with. Jeez, I just realized that. But maybe see Lio Rush find a friend. Somebody else on the NXT roster is not doing too much. And we see them go up to the tag team titles. Maybe we see that kind of be the case. Because I think Angel Garza would be a fantastic addition to the mid-card of AEW. Angel Garza would be a fantastic addition to the mid-card of NXT. And going for that North American Championship. Because you look at it, he's kind of the guy that is the complete opposite of Keith Lee, who is your new North American champion, for those of you that don't know. Lee is kind of the good guy who can overcome anything. Garza's kind of like that little sneaky guy who he doesn't cross the line, like super cross the line, but like just barely in like little spots here and there. It would be a perfect antagonist. It would be a perfect antithesis to Keith Lee. But I don't think he loses the title here. I think Garza's reign goes for a bit longer, maybe till TakeOver Tampa Bay. Maybe he costs Isaiah Scott a championship match at TakeOver Portland, and then Scott qualifies for a championship match at TakeOver Tampa Bay and wins the title there. Very, very hard to say. This title scene is very full when you think about it. Because you think 205 Live qualifies on here too. So you have like Kendrick, Raul Mendoza, Jack Gallagher, and a bunch of others who aren't necessarily doing too much that could fight for this title if they wanted to. Let's go from the Cruiserweight Championship match to another championship match. One of only two championship matches on this show. Rhea Ripley defending the NXT Women's Championship against Toni Storm. The only reason I'm saying NXT Women's Championship, for those of you that don't know, there was a story going around that they will be dropping the Women's title, the women's tag for the championship, and just calling it the NXT Championship. It says NXT Women's Championship on the Wikipedia page where I'm reading this article, where I'm reading the match card off of. That's the only reason. So this one has a bit of story behind it. Both of these two, in Storm and Ripley, got to the Mae Young Classic semifinals. Yes, because Ripley only got to the quarters. I think Ripley only got to the quarters because Ripley lost to Satomura. What did Ripley lose to Shirai? Now I'm like confused. Young 2018. Let's see here. No, yeah, she lost to Shirai. Okay, so yeah, that was the semifinals. So both of these two got to the semifinals. Both are from... I hate saying they're from Australia. Because Rhea Ripley is from Australia. Toni Storm is from New Zealand. She is from New Zealand. But these are two friends who knew each other for a long time because Toni Storm did live a lot of her life in Australia, which is, I guess, why they qualify her as Australian. This one, it's kind of hard to see any other outcome than Ripley winning. Because Ripley, she just got the championship from Baszler. She's not going to lose it in her first defense, I would think. And especially because there's more of a story between Ripley and Belair than there is between Belair and Storm. Now, Toni Storm's kind of done it all in NXT UK, and we can see this is her officially coming over to NXT North America. But also, I'm throwing this out there. After WrestleMania, we're still going to get quote-unquote call-ups. It's hard to even say what they are now. We could just see this as like a draft central thing where it's like trades being made in certain spots with things. Like certain superstars pop up on Raw who weren't on there before, certain people pop up on SmackDown who weren't there before, and certain wrestlers pop up on NXT that weren't there before. I can see some combination of Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, and Io Shirai all moving to the main roster. To Raw or SmackDown. I don't think all three go at once. I could see it, but I don't know if it will happen. I think at least three of them happen. I'm pretty sure everybody thinks Baszler's going. I can see Belair going. It's down between Shirai and Ripley. I think there's more story to tell with Shirai and Ripley. I don't think Ripley's going to have a super long reign with the title. I wouldn't be against her having a super long reign with the title, especially if it goes to Io. But especially if the title goes to Io Shirai, I'm all for her having a short reign. And this is kind of like how my brain works with every championship win. Like, okay, well, where do they lose it at? Who do they lose it to? Like, who makes sense? The only person right now that makes sense to me for Ripley to lose it to is Shirai. And that's so they can kind of try to get Io Shirai to stay, because rumor is she could go back to Stardom. If they put the title on her, who knows? But it's a pretty simple one here. Ripley's going to win because there's a lot more story to tell with her as champion, and also she just won the title. There's no way after a year... Oh, God, how long did Baszler even have the title, like, combined? Like, almost a year and a half reign. After Baszler's year and a half reign, they're not going to have the next champion only hold it for, like, a month. Tony's time is coming. It will happen. I don't know when it will be, but I think it will be next calendar year, I think, at least. If we're talking, like, championship wins. She'll still be successful in 2020, but, like, 2021 is the earliest I can see her winning the women's championship. especially if Io Shirai is the champion. There's a lot of story you could tell there. Next, let's get to... this is a hard call to say what's the main event. Is the main event going to be Undisputed Era versus Imperium, or is it going to be DIY versus Mustache Mountain? Let's go with DIY versus Mustache Mountain next. These two teams kind of... This is a weird dream match I never thought I needed to see. Never did I say in these past few years that I need to see DIY versus Mustache Mountain. But when you give me that and I sit and think about it, I get super excited for this. These two teams are going to go hell for leather, and we're just going to get to see them beat the ever-loving crap out of each other. Now, it's kind of hard to see Mustache Mountain winning, to be fair. Bate kind of got a nice little send-off after his match at NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool 2, Electric Boogaloo. And I could see Seven going with him. But NXT UK really needs names. After Walter and Dragunov, who's really there? Dunn's over at NXT full-time. You'd have Bate and Seven there full-time. You do have, like, Mark Andrews / Morgan Webster, Eddie Dennis, even Dave Mastiff to an extent. And you could easily get guys from NXT North America who aren't doing too much to go over there for once in a while. We've seen it work pretty well with Cassius Ohno. But we'll see with that. This match is going to be super high-paced, though. Super fast. I don't expect a lot of rest periods. They're not going to be flying all over the place, but they'll be moving really fast. It's going to be kind of like Gargano and Bate are going to be like the little speed rats, the little speed demons. And Seven and Ciampa are going to be like the technical two, the brawlers of the two. And this feels like another easy win for NXT. This is where, especially with how DIY just got back together, I don't see it ending after... I see it as a one-time thing, yes, but I don't see it as we're going to put them back together just to have them lose. This might be the most predictable show we are going into this weekend, which is fine with me. I'm all for predictability. But having it be this predictable kind of feels weird in a way. But I'm not against it. But this has the potential to not just be match of the night, but match of the year. These two teams are that good. And I am going to just sit back, relax, and enjoy watching two of the best tag teams in the world go head-to-head. That leaves us with the main event of Undisputed Era, which is Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish, and Kyle O'Reilly taking on Imperium, which is Walter, Marcel Bartel, Fabian Eichner, and Alexander Wolf. I did all of that without looking at my phone. I am very proud of myself. So, NXT UK to this point would have been main show-wise shut out. Because I have Garza retaining, I have Ripley retaining, I have Balor beating Dragunov, and I have DIY winning. They do have the win with Kaylee Ray. Also, you can kind of say a gray area where is Tony Storm at. But that would still be it'd be a 2-1 thing where if Undisputed Era wins, they go up 3-1 and NXT wins, whereas if it's Imperium winning, it'd be 2-2 tie, so you get nowhere. But I don't think it's going to be like a score thing. I think it's just like saying, hey, here's NXT versus NXT UK. Go at it. I say this match is kind of interesting to predict. Imperium got the better of Undisputed Era on NXT this week. But Undisputed Era got Imperium in their home in the UK. It's a really hard one to call, especially considering you have the NXT champion, you have the NXT tag team champions, and you have the NXT UK champion all in the match. I don't think the NXT UK tag team champs are. I think that's Gallus. Yep, it's Gallus. So I look at this as kind of this is the hardest one to predict on the show because of the fact that there's so many weird things that could play into this. Like, do you want to have Adam Cole lose? Who takes the pinfall? What champion looks weak? Who comes out of this looking worse? But I think if you look at it, it's going to be Imperium walking out with the win. And let me explain why. These two, this group started off as essentially it's an offshoot of Ring Kampf, which was at first Walter, Timothy Thatcher, and Marcel Bartel. Now it's added Alexander Wolf was in the original in some capacity too. I don't remember exactly what, but he was. You added Eichner, which was a very interesting ad at the time, but very happy it happened. It's a very well-rounded stable. And also you look at it, Undisputed Era is kind of coming off of a loss where Roddy lost the North American Championship to Keith Lee. And Undisputed Era is the team that they can lose here and nobody looks bad, to be fair. But you question who's going to take the pin. Bobby Fish. It makes the most sense. It's understandable. Maybe you have like Alexander Wolf pin him so that way Imperium isn't like clamoring for a title shot or something along those lines. I don't know. But we will see. Especially considering that one probably will main event the show. I would think. But who knows? So that's Worlds Collide. This Worlds Collide predictions went on longer than I was hoping. I have, just to recap, Kaylee Ray winning over Mia Yim. Finn Balor over Ilya Dragunov. Angel Garza retaining the Cruiserweight Championship. Rhea Ripley retaining the NXT Women's Championship. DIY over Mustache Mountain. And Imperium defeating Undisputed Era. Let's roll on to the Royal Rumble itself. This is a really, really good show card. 8 matches, all of them very understandable. 2 of them are Royal Rumble matches, so you figured that at least. And now you look at it, there's so many stories in this show that I am very, very excited for it. You have the likes of the story going on SmackDown with Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin, which could be better, could be worse. You have the story of Becky with her last debt to collect. You have the story of the return of Sheamus. You have Lacey Evans trying to prove she belongs against Bayley, essentially. You have Andrade going against Humberto Carrillo in a match of the future stars of Mexico. And it's people's favorite event of the year. It's my personal favorite event of the year. I love the Royal Rumble. WrestleMania is a close second. Elimination Chamber is a close third. Money in the Bank is a very close fourth. Like those are the 4 shows that I'm super excited about. And if the chronological order stays the same from last year's pay-per-view schedule to this one, I get all 4 first pay-per-views of the year, and I can be like, sweet, I'm done. Bye. Maybe there's a Fastlane in there. Who knows? I went to Fastlane last year. Had a lot of fun. Wasn't a bad show. Could have been better, but wasn't bad. Anyway, that's getting on topic. Let's look at this card here. Like I said, 8 matches. Let's start with what probably will end up on the pre-show. Although I can see it being Andrade and Carrillo. Chad Gable, not calling him the other name, versus Sheamus. This is an easy one. Sheamus. He just came back. He's been having all these hype packages, all these build-up promos. It would be very surprising if he does not win his first match back. And I think it makes sense. It's Sheamus. He's done it all. He's done so much where Gable, as a single star, has yet to really find his footing. I do say I want one more championship run out of Sheamus. I want an Intercontinental Championship run out of him. And it's the one thing he hasn't done. I would love to see him win it and then lose it to Cesaro. And that can cap off Sheamus's career. And that's a hell of a career he's had. Nobody saw this coming in 2009. It's 2020 and we're still talking about the pale, red-headed Irishman. Fantastic job by Sheamus. This match isn't going to go long, I don't think. It could be 8 to 10 minutes. So expect this one to be pretty short. Maybe they keep it on the main show and keep it short. Who knows? Next, I'm just going to go in order. The United States Championship match where Andrade defends against Humberto Carrillo. Again, this one kind of feels easy. Andrade has done a pretty good job with the U.S. title so far. His ladder match with Ray, from the highlights I've seen, was really good. The match where he won it, from what I heard, was really good too, where he won it from Ray at MSG. Excuse me, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. And this has been a great rebound for him on the main roster. It was something he needed and something you kind of are happy to see. It's also kind of sad that Humberto's kind of flopping. But also you look at it, Andrade has a character. He's that dastardly heel that you just want to hate. And like, to be fair, for like people like me, I'm a fan of Andrade. But other people are like, no, he's a bad guy, boo. And I'm like, good, he's a heel that gets booed in 2020. You don't see a lot of them. And Humberto Carrillo doesn't really, like I said, he doesn't have a character. He's got a smile, he's got dimples, and he's got a cape. He's great in the ring, but why do I care? Why should I care? Give me a reason to care. Right now, if you had to ask me, what should happen is Carrillo should form a team with Ricochet and just make it a team where it's two great wrestlers that are good at what they do. And bam, there's another help for the tag team division. Hire me, WWE. I could help the tag team division. I actually would really like to do that because I do have ideas. And I'm like, let me help. I want to help. Next is, I say, another predictable one. I've heard ideas thrown around with this one, but I don't like those ideas personally. Like these types of stories, I don't like having hot potato title just to have it end up on somebody else for WrestleMania. Bayley defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Lacey Evans. Lacey's looked well. She's looked pretty good these past few months, actually, to be fair. She was never like super sloppy in the ring, but you could tell it was just so much put on her so fast when she got on the main roster. Like, there were all these expectations and high stuff. Like, people were super excited for her backstage, and she just dropped the ball. She's rebounded really nicely, and I'm very excited to see where she goes. I would love to see her and Dana Brooke as a team, because they're both women who don't get a lot of spotlight, and they would do really well in the women's tag team division because of the fact that they're both very underrated, in my opinion. Dana Brooke especially. She's improved a ton since coming to the main roster. But I don't think she's going to be a singles champion anytime soon. That championship stays with Bayley. The story they're telling right now with Bayley is a lot more compelling than whatever story they would tell with Lacey Evans going into WrestleMania. I don't mean that in a bad way, but there's just more to the Bayley story with a certain somebody I'll talk about a little bit later. Everybody probably knows who it is, but I need stuff to talk about later still too, for the Rumbles. And it's kind of a nice thing to see Bayley as a heel now too. It's a breath of fresh air. She's different. She's changed up her look. She's changed up her music. Everything is different, and it's such a welcome change. I am very happy to see this change here. Will we see it result in more success in her winning more matches? So far, yes. She's looked really well since turning heel. But I think this is a very predictable one. And I'm mad I'm saying it. I want to see a decent match out of this at least. I don't know how long it'll get. I don't think a lot of here's the thing with booking a Royal Rumble show. You need to have at least an hour for each Rumble match. So a lot of the matches on the normal show aren't going to be terribly long. They're going to be relatively short. So I can see this one. Maybe this kicks off the show. Maybe. But I see Bayley walking out with her hand raised and winning the match. And maybe they do the same thing they did last year. Well, that'd be tough because you don't know which Rumble will go where. This is a weird year for the Rumbles, and I'll explain what I mean when I get to them. But right now, for this match, Bayley wins and continues her path to WrestleMania as champion. Next up is Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I'm not going to spend extensively long on this one. Roman has to win and end this feud now. I am tired of it. I am sick of it. I don't want it anymore. I want this thing done. Ever since they brought out the whole dog food thing, I've been like, why? Why are you doing this? Why should I care that you're including dog food in a storyline? Because Roman's the big dog? Dude, that's stupid. It's dumb. You don't need it. Roman wins. We don't see the storyline anymore. And good riddance to it. Maybe Corbin has a good Rumble. I don't know. I'm a fan of Corbin, which is a shame. I don't like the storyline at all. I'm not the biggest Reigns fan, but I understand why people like him. And like I said, I don't hate him. I don't hate any wrestlers. There's wrestlers I don't like. Like, I don't like their character. Like, I'll never say that I hate a wrestler because they're out there doing their job. I respect each and every single wrestler who ever steps in between those ropes, but there are some that just don't click with you, and Roman is like that with me. I don't personally hate him, but he's not my cup of tea. But anyway, he wins here, and we see this feud end, and we don't talk about it again ever. Next up is the Raw Women's Championship match where Becky Lynch defends against Asuka. Again, another predictable one, I feel. You look at it, you have Becky, who's out to collect these debts. She's beaten Charlotte plenty of times. She's beaten Lacey Evans. She's beaten everybody who's wronged her in the past. The only person she has never beat is Asuka. She lost the TLC 2 years ago. She lost again to Asuka. It's like some random tag team match. Then she lost the TLC last year. It's still weird to say that was last year when it was December and now it's 2020. And now she wants to right that ship. She lost to Asuka at the Rumble last year. That's what it was. When I said random tag match, she lost to Asuka at the Rumble. I think it's finally time for her to collect that debt, fix that wrong, and go on to continue to be the dominant force and maybe have actually one more debt left depending on the Women's Royal Rumble. And like, this is nice to see at least. Asuka's kind of felt better these past few months even. She's gone from being a laughingstock joke that was a former undefeated NXT Women's Champion who was a legitimate threat. She went to a joke, and now you look at it, she is back to being this amazing wrestler that everybody knows. This has been a great job by both Becky and Asuka for that, and I want to see more of it. And I'm very excited to see where both of these women go afterwards. Especially for the women's tag team titles, because we don't have a lot of tag teams right now. So, what exactly is next for them? We haven't seen the Iconics since, I want to say since they lost the titles, but I feel like they were on TV a little while afterwards. I could be wrong. And with Becky, I think we know where she's going, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Next is I'm kind of breezing through this card because there's this card. It's great from top to bottom, but a lot of them feel predictable. I didn't want to talk about the Roman match because I can see a scenario where Corbin wins, but Roman eliminates him in the Rumble. Imagine if they're like Okay, imagine this scenario really quick. Imagine if the men's rumble is on before Corbin and Reigns' Falls Count Anywhere match. They both enter like numbers after each other. They both eliminate each other, surprisingly. A lot of people have Roman winning the Rumble. I'm not giving away my prediction yet, but a lot of people have Roman winning the Rumble. Imagine they both eliminate each other, and then Roman looks at the ref, and looks at the ref, he looks at Corbin on the ground, goes to pin Corbin, and the Falls Count Anywhere match goes on while the Rumble is happening. That's a dumb scenario, very attitude era, yes, but I could see it happening. But who really knows about that? Who can really tell? But let's look at the WWE Championship match between Bray Wyatt, the champion, and Daniel Bryan, the challenger. I really, really like the stipulation of the strap match. This is a stipulation you don't see very often. The last strap match I remember, it was either Jeff Hardy Umaga or Shad and JTG. Because those two are like really close to each other, at least I think in timeline wise. Okay, I was gonna tap on strap match and see if it gave me a chronological history of every strap match ever. It doesn't, unfortunately, but maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? But Bryan has said the Fiend has been running away. The Fiend's been a coward. And he doesn't want the Fiend to run away. He wants to handle it one-on-one in the middle of the ring. That's how you get that to happen. And I'm very curious to see what these two can do in that kind of scenario. Bryan's a very technical guy, so maybe he'll use the rope, the strap, in some sort of submission hold. Maybe we see it as a weapon. But I do think that it's a hard one here because I watch Cultaholic and Ross there put this image in my head and I can't stop seeing it. It's either last SmackDown or the SmackDown before where Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns had a face off. And that's been in my head. Could that be used for future? Yes, it could easily be for WrestleMania next year when Bryan finally gets a Rumble win, maybe. Or it could be for Mania this year, where Bryan wins the championship here, somehow, some way, and holds it off from the Fiend at Elimination Chamber and Fastlane. If we are getting two before Mania, Elimination Chamber is confirmed as happening, but we don't know about if it's Fastlane or something else. Maybe the Saudi show, who knows? I hate those shows so much. But then we see Roman wins the Rumble, and we see Bryan versus Roman at WrestleMania. A match where, if you had asked me which match I would want to see at WrestleMania going into this year, I wouldn't have said Bryan versus Roman. But that's what I want to see now. Those two could work really well together, and they have in the past. There was the one Fastlane 2015 where the two faced off and had a really good main event match. Main event level match, at least. But where Roman beat Bryan. I could see it happening. I really could, but I feel like the Fiend makes a lot more sense here. It's still a little early for him to lose the title. The earliest I even see him possibly losing it is Mania. But I look at it. This is exactly where I think wrestling should be. They should have you questioning, is this person going to win here? Is this person going to win there? It shouldn't just be like, oh yeah, this person's winning. This person's winning. I enjoy these like bits that make your head hurt where it's like, I can see both guys winning. I can see the last three matches I just went through, Reigns versus Corbin, Lynch versus Asuka, and Wyatt versus Bryan. I see every scenario where somebody else wins. And it's enjoyable, yes, but it makes my head hurt, and I don't like it. What makes my head hurt more, though, is these Royal Rumble matches. So, I have friends that watch wrestling, and we were talking about this today and the day before. Who wins the Rumble match? But more importantly, what's the Final Four? Because the Final Four kind of go on to have really, really good years the following year. 2018, you had Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, Roman Reigns, and John Cena. Cena is an exception there. Roman always has a good year. Shinsuke, outside of not winning the championship and having a feud with AJ Styles about low blows, essentially, won the U.S. championship, looked pretty good. So he had a pretty decent year afterwards. Balor, 2018 was kind of a low light for Balor, so that's not something. Last year's Final Four, Braun Strowman, he looked decent last year. He never really kind of took that next step that he needs to do, but he looked well. Seth Rollins, fantastic job. He says dumb stuff, yes, but he's looked really good in the ring. Andrade was in the Final Four. I don't even need to talk about what Andrade's done. He's main event shows, gone one-on-one with AJ Styles. He's beaten Rey Mysterio more times than I can count. And the other one, crap, who was the other one? It's always weird, too, because there's always, like, that one that you never remember. Because, like, I looked it up. Rick Martel had 2 Final Four appearances. Dolph Ziggler. It was Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler had a decent year. A couple tag team title reigns. A few... Yeah, Ziggler won the Raw tag team titles. A feud with Kofi Kingston. Yeah, Dolph had a pretty decent year that year. And now you look at it, this is where things are fun. The women's Final Four hasn't had the same look, but there's so fewer opportunities for the women's division that if you're not number one contender or champion, you kind of still get a little passed up. If you're in a tag team, that helps, but still. But anyway, I digress. Let's start with the Women's Royal Rumble match. We don't know many participants. We have 5 announced. Currently announced for the match, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, Sarah Logan, and Natalya. I'm assuming a lot of the wrestlers on the roster will be in this match. And I've read a lot of NXT and NXT UK wrestlers will be included, which is very fine by me. But let's see some surprises. Let's see some things we're not expecting. We're all expecting... I wouldn't say we're all expecting, but it's highly likely we see at least one of these next 3 wrestlers, Naomi, Ruby Riott, and Nia Jax. We see at least one of those 3 in the match, possibly all 3. We haven't seen Naomi since her husband had the DUI. We haven't seen Ruby Riott since after WrestleMania because of her shoulder surgery. We haven't seen Nia Jax since WrestleMania either because of her double ACL surgery. So those 3 can be expected, but like surprise-wise is also kind of hard for the women's division because there's not a lot of names left that could really be considered surprises. We've done Trish already, we've done Lita, we've done Michelle McCool. Mickie James wouldn't be bad, but I don't know how close she is to actually being ready to come back. There was one name somebody threw out. I forget who it was, and it wasn't Twitter, it was somebody on YouTube. That would be a really good surprise, considering especially now her husband is back with the company. Taya Valkyrie. That would be very interesting to see. But what's more important is who's going to win the match. So, I also have written down my final 4. My final 4 are Charlotte Flair, Shayna Baszler, Sasha Banks, and Ruby Riott. Riott's kind of in there. Couple reasons. One, I'm a Ruby Riott mark. Sue me. But also, the Final Four, sometimes they have that surprise, that person you're not expecting to be there, and you're like, oh, they're there. And then you start to run scenarios in your head like, there's so many stories you could tell with this. There's so many different things that could happen. So you're like, okay, this could work. It's like I would have loved to see Andrade win the Royal Rumble last year and go on to face, oh God, who was the champion? Daniel Bryan, because that was before Kofi Mania got started. Riot is kind of there because I needed a fourth. To be fair, I couldn't think of anybody else better. So it's really between three people, and all three of them could be interesting Rumble winners. Let's start with Charlotte Flair. Charlotte has done a lot in her career. The only few things she hasn't done is win a Royal Rumble and win Women's Money in the Bank. I can see her winning the Rumble this year, especially because of the fact that they've been advertising 3 brands compete. We've heard about Raw, and we have the scenarios for who wins and challenges the Raw Women's Champion. We have SmackDown, who we know who's probably going to be the match at for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. NXT, we kind of don't know. I threw out the idea of Shirai versus Ripley before. But what if Charlotte Flair wins and challenges Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship? That would be a very interesting scenario. And it gets NXT involved even more with the main roster and almost pretty much confirms NXT is the official 3rd brand. So let's keep that scenario in mind. Let's move next to Sasha Banks. Sasha has been off recording her rap album, if that actually is a thing. If it is, I will be very, very intrigued and surprised. I've never heard Sasha rap, so I don't know if she's even good or bad. No. But this almost confirms that we're seeing Sasha Banks versus Bayley at WrestleMania. This has been a match that I've kind of seen coming since they put the two back together. It's going to be interesting to see who's the face and who's the heel, or if they go heel versus heel. And how much time exactly do they give them? Do they give them 15, 20 minutes? Do they give them 10? Who knows? And then there's Shayna Baszler. Baszler is a 2-time NXT Women's Champion. She's done it all down there. Why have her in this Final Four? She's the most dominant NXT Women's Champion of all time. I will say that because Asuka kind of had a lower level of competition. I hate saying that, but it's kind of true. Because the NXT Women's Division right now is so deep that it's very hard to not say it's the best women's division in the world. And you look at it, it's got names in there like Kairi Sane. It's got Shotzi Blackheart, Diana Purrazzo, Chelsea Green, Mia Yim, Rhea Ripley, Io Shirai, Toni Storm. There's so many names there. But you look at it, and like especially of those 3 between Flair, Banks, and Baszler, the only one that makes sense is Baszler. Charlotte, you can figure out something else later for her at WrestleMania. She doesn't need to have a championship match every year. Maybe she's in the Battle Royal in the pre-show and wins that. That's an accolade she doesn't have yet. It also gets you a weird-looking trophy. And you can easily tell the Sasha Banks versus Bayley feud for WrestleMania without the Rumble win. There's so much history there that you don't need to add a Rumble win to that. Baszler versus Lynch has been the match in my head since they even announced NXT as a part of the Survivor Series weekend. This match has been in my head that long. I want to see it. I think it's where we're going. I think it's what we're going to get. And I'm very excited for it because it takes Baszler's technical background against Lynch's all-around, essentially, offense. And there's a lot of story to tell there. Baszler at Survivor Series beat Bayley. She didn't beat Lynch. But Lynch didn't win the match. And that whole feud, that whole build was so good. Imagine the second version of it, but even better. The stakes are raised. WrestleMania's coming up. Titles on the line. Royal Rumble winner versus most dominant Raw Women's Champion of all time. The story is right there. And I will be shocked if anybody but Shayna Baszler wins the Women's Royal Rumble. This one I feel like is the dead certain one. There's nobody else winning this match except for Shayna 2-time. And we get Lynch versus Baszler at Mania. Now, the men's. Am I excited that Brock Lesnar's in the match? No. Am I excited about the fact that we already know 25 of the wrestlers in the match? I don't hate knowing so many wrestlers are in the match already, but there's so little room for surprises. Like, there's 5 spots left. We could see 5 NXT guys. We're seeing at least 3. Because it's rumored Santino Marella is going to be showing up as a surprise entrant, which I'm fine with. I like Santino. But there's still that rumor that's nagging and annoying and bugging me that Edge is going to come back and be in the match. I don't know if I want it. I really don't know. And I don't know if it's going to happen. It's kind of the same way with John Morrison, where he was like, yeah, I haven't signed a contract. I'm not coming back to WWE yet. I've not signed anything. It's essentially the same story. Chris Jericho did the same thing in 2013 when he was number 2 in the Rumble, saying, oh yeah, no, I'm not in Florida, when he clearly was in Florida. It's so difficult. It's so hard to say, but it's like, that's not even the thing that I'm thinking about right now. I'm trying to think of who's going to win the match. So I know Brock's not winning, and it's rumored whoever eliminates Brock gets the WWE Championship match at WrestleMania. And I put this little scenario together in my head. Let's say Brock is dominating at some later point in the match, and he hits a big F5 on somebody. From outside of frame, somebody else is standing up, but Brock gets up from the F5, turns and looks, Claymore kicked right in the face, over the top rope, and eliminated. That's the best way I can see you eliminating Brock Lesnar from this match. Although I can also see a scenario where everybody eliminates Brock Lesnar, and we don't know who's getting the championship match. I can also see a scenario where Cain Velasquez eliminates Brock Lesnar. Who knows? I don't want that at all, but I can see it. I can see Cain Velasquez being number 2. I kind of want number 2 to be somebody semi-big, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. So, you look at it too, there's the Final Four is kind of hard to pick. 2 guys I feel are locks, and that's Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre. The last 2 are hard. You can see Lesnar getting there, but I don't think he will. I can see him being eliminated just before the Final Four. I have my Final Four as Reigns, McIntyre, AJ Styles, and this one's kind of a personal pick because he's from Cleveland and he's my boy, Johnny Gargano. Styles, he's not really got much going on right now. The feud with Orton isn't going to last forever. It might be even over by this point, for all I know. And Gargano, because NXT represented, I originally had Ciampa, but Ciampa has a title match. He probably has a title match at TakeOver Portland. He would make the most sense as the next challenger. Maybe Dijakovic. No, it's got to be Ciampa. It's got to be. Especially after the air raid crash off the top of the War Games and pinning Adam Cole. It would make a lot more sense. But yeah, Final Four, I have Reigns, McIntyre, Styles, and Gargano. This also gives Gargano a big rub because he's in there with 2 future Hall of Famers. McIntyre, who's proving himself week after week to be one of the next big things in wrestling. And AJ Styles and Johnny Gargano. Who wouldn't want to see that match? But when it comes to winner, it's between 2. AJ's not winning it this year, and Gargano's not winning it this year. It's between Reigns and McIntyre. As soon as the calendar flipped to January, I started to think about the Royal Rumble. The only person that made sense was Roman Reigns. He's got the story there. He's the only person that you can really see defeating The Fiend. But also, he doesn't need the Rumble win to make that story happen. And then McIntyre has gotten himself so over these past few weeks that it kind of makes sense for McIntyre to win. But again, if he eliminates Brock Lesnar, he doesn't need the Royal Rumble win to set up the match at WrestleMania. So my brain's been like torn in two on this topic, on picking a winner. And I sit here and I'm still unsure, but I have to make a prediction. You know what? Everybody is going with Roman Reigns. Both the guys in Cultaholic are going with Roman Reigns. A lot of coworkers I have are going with Roman Reigns. A lot of people are going with Roman Reigns. Friends I have are going with Roman Reigns. I'm going to go opposite. I am taking Drew McIntyre. This guy has gotten himself so over these past few weeks. He's beaten AJ Styles and Randy Orton. He's got crowds cheering for him and counting down to Claymore kicks. He kicked No Way Jose's poor head off of his shoulders, and everybody cheered it. This man gotten himself over, and I think it's time that you take somebody who got themselves over and put them on that pedestal again. And you look at it, the last people that got themselves this over, Daniel Bryan and Kofi Kingston. What happened to them? They didn't win the Rumble, no. They would go on to win the championship at WrestleMania that year. Maybe it's time for them to let McIntyre take that reign and make it his own. Have McIntyre be the first ever UK-born WWE champion. That's a very risky pick on my part, because I really see Reigns winning it. But I'm taking McIntyre. That is my official Royal Rumble predictions. To recap, I have Sheamus over Chad Gable. Andrade retains the United States Championship. Bayley retains the SmackDown Women's Championship. Roman Reigns beating Baron Corbin to end this stupid feud that I don't care about at all. Becky Lynch retaining over Asuka. The Fiend retaining the Universal Championship over Bryan. Shayna Baszler winning the women's Royal Rumble. And Drew McIntyre, easy for me to say, winning the men's Royal Rumble. Final four predictions for the women's Royal Rumble: Shayna Baszler, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, and Ruby Riott. Men's final four predictions are Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, AJ Styles, and Johnny Gargano. Two little wild cards in there, but why not? It's the Royal Rumble. Let's have some fun this year. I'm just hoping we get two really good Rumbles. I could care less about any stories told in them. Give me two good matches, please. But that's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. As always, you can follow myself on Twitter at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat on Twitter at Things Combat, where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. I will be doing Worlds Collide tweets, live tweets. Very excited for that show to go on. I will not be doing Royal Rumble because I don't know when I'll be home. You can also buy our merch in our merch store at the link in the description below. And you can also follow the Cauldron at Cleveland State on Twitter at CSU Cauldron, where I'm the sports editor over there. First issue's out. Articles are up. There is a link on that Twitter page's bio where you can go and read those articles. I'm over in the sports section. For those of you that don't understand, that I'm the sports editor and I write in the sports section. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully we get some two good Rumbles. Next week I'll be back talking about these matches and actually what happened and giving my overall thoughts and opinions on them. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you then.